we shouldn't have competition with creatives. There should be community. There should be helping change the narrative of how people see creative work and the opportunities that circle around that. And if we all work together to create those opportunities, how much better would it be for business owners and for creatives?
Off a day, it's your innovation coach, Rob Jackson, and welcome to another edition of the Innovate Guam Podcast where we explore all things innovation, technology, and improvement related to the island of Guam. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow me on YouTube, Spotify, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Substack. Also, be sure to check out my Innovate column in the Pacific Daily News every other Friday of the month. Today, we're continuing our monthly entrepreneurship series, where we sit down with Guam entrepreneurs and talk candidly about the good, the bad, and the ugly of building a business here on this island. And today's conversation is a little special for me because our guest and I share some history. We were classmates in the 2025 GUMA Cohort. That's the Guam Unique Merchandising and Arts program. We were just two entrepreneurs with very different businesses sitting in the same room, learning how to turn ideas, talents, and passions into sustainable businesses. So today is part podcast for me and part GUMA reunion. Today's guest is Ashley Janae Alcantara, founder and creative force behind the Smol Creative. Ashley's creative journey has been developing for years. As early as 2020, she was publicly sharing her artwork and talking about Guam's creative community. She later joined the Guam Football Association as a social media content creator before moving up to its full-time marketing and commercialization specialist. Since then, Ashley has continued building a career at the intersection of design, branding, marketing, and entrepreneurship. Through the Smol Creative, Ashley provides graphic design, branding, digital art, marketing campaigns, and creative consultation with a portfolio that includes work for local entrepreneurs and established organizations. But Ashley's bigger ambition is what makes today's conversation interesting, helping raise the value of creative work on Guam, as well as developing local talent, strengthening professional standards, and creating more opportunities for Guam's creative community. And I got to watch part of that entrepreneurial journey firsthand when Ashley and I were classmates in the 2025 GUMA cohort. Ashley, welcome, my fellow GUMA alum. Welcome to the Innovate Guam podcast. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we have a tradition here. We always start off with some icebreaker questions. And the question that I ask every uh, guest on the episode is, what does innovation mean to you?
Off the top of my head, I think the one word that I can use to describe innovation is risk. I think
Mm,
risk taking is a big part in being innovative. Um, Sticking with the status quo doesn't always allow you to be innovative. So, finding the value in things, no matter what you can apply it to, I think being able to take a risk is the start to
yeah, I
innovation.
like that. I like that. All right, so let's talk a little bit about your business. We're going to talk a little bit more in depth later on in the episode, but the name, the Smol Creative. So, can you give us some background of the name and why that name and how it came to be?
It's actually a very simple humorous story. When I was in college, I went to GCC for visual communications and marketing. Ashley is such a common name, so there were about two or three different Ashleys in my class, spelled exactly the same even. So at the time, I was the only one that was 4'8", small, and my instructor ended up nicknaming me Smalls. So it kind of just stuck. And we did have an assignment where we had to come up with our own business and, try to be an entrepreneur. And it just stuck for some reason, the Smol Creative. And I'm like, I'm going to use that. So it's kind of what people know me as in my college era. And
Yeah.
yeah, it just stuck.
What about the spelling, excuse me, Smol of it? So
It's
tell us about
small.
this. Yes.
So it's pretty much just like a slang play on the word, instead of it just being regular small, it's different and trendy and just it kind of reflects my like
Your
personality in a way.
personality.
Yes. So people already know, right? It's not the small creative, it's small because we're not about small ideas. We're about small ideas.
Yeah, it's funny that you should say that. I'm laughing to myself because I think about the first day of our GUMA training, and I think you were sitting right next to me, and we met and talked. And I think the thing that I remembered made me remember you the most was your size. Your size was the thing that
You
made
got to
you
play with
stand
it.
out. Yes. Speaking of GUMA, let's talk about that, right? So we were both classmates in the Guam Unique Merchandising and Arts program. It's been about a 1 year since we both went through the GUMA program. It's one thing you understand about entrepreneurship today that you didn't understand when we started our cohort journey about a year ago.
I feel like the biggest lesson that I've learned, or maybe probably even knew, but came up frequently over the past year is collaborations can be good or bad.
Mm,
It's
good or bad?
good or
Interesting.
bad. It's a word that's been thrown out a lot, being exposed to more business owners these days. And a lot of people are all about community and collaboration, but I have actually seen instances where collaboration can actually hurt one business and be good for the other. A lot of
Mm,
times there's not an even give or take from both businesses. One
yes,
business will end up doing more of the work in the collaboration, whereas the other business will end up just being present and take the aftermath of it, like all of the hype that
yes,
comes from it. Like they'll be benefiting more than one business because they were the ones that did all the legwork. It's kind of like event coordination. You have to be in it together and have mutual results. And I think it's something that I've been seeing, not necessarily firsthand, like I haven't had that firsthand, but I have witnessed in our local small business community that has happened multiple times.
yeah. That's a great point, and it also gets to the heart of value exchange and understanding what the value exchange is up front, so that you can negotiate the terms and conditions of the partnership, of the collaboration, of the agreement, so that everyone benefits equally. And if there is a disparity in the value exchange, then you understand that up front so that people aren't, let down on the back end about, well, yeah, I thought this was going to be a little bit better for me. So I like that. So let's get into the meat of the episode now. And I want to start with you, the Ashley story, right? So, where did you begin your creative journey, and how did you go from being someone with creative talent to somebody who's actually building a career and an actual business around it?
Well, I've always been an artist. I've always been a creative since I was a kid. I would start out physical, little drawings here and there. And then I gradually went to painting and working in a corporate setting for 7 years. I was allowed to utilize my artistic talents. And the more people saw it, the more they realized, like, hey, you could be doing something with this. And so at some point, I was like, I can. I can actually make this a career or more than just a side hobby. So I ended up pursuing like years later and growing from there.
That's awesome. So what I'm hearing you tell the audience is entrepreneurship wasn't the destination for you. You were just expressing yourself. The thought about entrepreneurship and creating a business around this came later on, after you were given praise and feedback of just you being you and expressing yourself.
Yes, it was more of just a, oh, I love to do this. But, over time, especially being exposed to business owners and the corporate setting and working with other organizations, it was something that was apparent to me that, hey, this, it doesn't have to be unattainable here. And you can do so much with your talents, not just to make money, but also to help people. I had a lot of people coming to me saying, hey, are you able to do this? Because I don't know who I can go to. So that's kind of where my brain was shifting from creative to entrepreneur.
Yes, yes. And one could argue that there's a real big difference between being great at design and being a good creative to actually running a successful design business or a successful creative business. So, what was the hardest part of making that transition for you from creative professional to entrepreneur?
I think the separation. We know artists to be very close to what they do, very emotionally invested. Me, I don't really have too much of a problem with that. My issue, my difficulty was knowing when to park the creative in me and let the business owner take over, right? Because there's
Yes,
always the things in between, the finances, the marketing, the pricing, and I was very, I had problems trying to separate the two because I would end up making decisions with my heart and not my head because the heart
hmm.
is the creative and the head is the business owner, right? So it's really about
Right.
making sure there's a good balance in between the two so that you can get what you need to done.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you started doing this and exercising that, what surprised you the most once you got behind the curtain of running your own business?
I think what was apparent the most to me was the fact that I was emotional pricing. I didn't really know the term
Let's
even
talk about
before.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know the
Emotional
term.
pricing. I like the phrase, I like the term. So let's dig deep into that one. Go ahead.
I find that a lot of people, especially creatives here, locally, we tend to price based on how we feel other people would perceive our work, right? Other people would
Mm,
pay. If I was somebody paying for this, would I pay that much? Or in this economy, how can somebody afford this? And, as a business owner, it's something that needs to be discussed because really you can't make profit if you continue to emotional price. There's no room for growth. It's not logical because you do have to cover the costs of your work, your time, your
yes,
operations. Um,
yes,
but then also meeting that middle part where, okay, it's still within reach of a potential customer or customers who return, right? So I think I just
yes,
have become more aware of making sure that I am not emotional pricing and that even if I'm not completely comfortable with a set price, that I can gradually change that based on either the offerings, the experience that I have, or relationship I've had with projects um, similar in that area, or to international industry standards because I also do research to see, oh, okay, how much is somebody paying for this outside of the local market?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And you didn't specifically say it, but what I hear you say in emotional pricing is there's two ends of emotional prices. You could be emotionally pricing yourself too high as well as pricing yourself too low. Do you want to talk about both ends of the emotional pricing scale?
And you know what? I think that always comes back to the person who's setting those prices, right? You price too low, most of the time it's because you don't agree that the value that you're putting out meets the amount that people will pay. Whereas if you were to overprice, right, the value, are you matching that with the price that you're setting? It really comes down to, do you believe in the value that you're offering and the time that it takes to put that price up?
Yeah, yeah. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about creativity. I'm really excited to go down this rabbit hole with you, right? Um, so I think a lot of business owners kind of misunderstand creativity and understanding, what that is and how it communicates to their customers as well as stakeholders and, really the whole market out there. A logo isn't simply a picture. Branding isn't simply making something look good. Good creative works that really help a business communicate who it is, connect with your customers, differentiate yourself, and ultimately create value for yourself. So let's make the business case for creativity. What does create good creativity or creative work actually do for a company, and why is it important?
I think in the business world, strategy is everything. Creatives can create just to make things nice or appealing, but from a business standpoint, there needs to be a reason, right? Otherwise, you're just making to make. You're putting out things into the world that just become a part of the noise that people see, the overconsumption, especially in the digital age, right? A lot of
Yeah,
businesses, they don't really understand that they need to understand the why before the how and the who. And
yes.
I think it's a simple question, right? What are you trying to do with this creative work? Are you hiring a videographer because you want a commercial? Or are you hiring a videographer because you want somebody to feel a certain way about the product that you sell or the service that you provide? Same thing with graphics, right? Creative work. Are you going to create a flyer just because you want people to know that you're having a promotion? Or do you want them to completely believe that your product stands out compared to others who are selling the same thing? It's
Mm,
about making that distinction between, why am I even going to start this project or create this graphic or create this commercial or ad? And why am I choosing this person as
mm,
to getting something off stock photos or stock graphics?
right, right. So, give us an example of kind of the opposite, that you've seen maybe locally or nationally, bad branding or bad or poor creative decisions costing a business in terms of the bottom line.
I think focusing on quantity over quality. Unfortunately, Guam doesn't have the same standards that international brands have. I'm not saying that nobody has those standards. There are actually businesses and corporations and organizations who have consistency in quality. And I think it really just it speaks volumes to how quick pace the business world is here, but also that expectation for creatives to match that. Sometimes you can hire a really good designer and a really good videographer or creative, but you don't give them enough time. you don't give them enough information. And so if you're going to do something on your own, which is complete, I'm so for it, like the way I function is I try to make sure that my clients have the tools they need and the independency to do things on their own if they don't have
Right.
me. Um, that's all fine and dandy, but you need to know why you're doing it, right? And so at that point, there's no effectiveness if you're going to have inconsistency. Um, okay, I just want to post today because I need to post. I need to stay relevant. But then the quality starts to drop because you're dealing with other things, right? It's going back to being a creative and a business owner. No one person can do both. And that's the whole reason why big corporations have either outsourced talent, they hire other people to do the thinking for them and the work, or they have in-house departments that clearly focus on that so that you're not compromising quality, you're not compromising the time that it takes and the energy it takes to pull you away from other things. And so I think the most important part of all of that is a good design meets certain standards, certain quality, and also sends the right message for your brand or for your company.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. Not every business really needs the same creative solution, and not every creative is right for every business. So knowing how the business owner, uh, what they truly need and what they're trying to go to is very important. But then there's a lot of business owners that aren't creatives. So they're like, I don't even use that part of me. I need
Right.
somebody to be my brain in that department and be able to look at me and look at what I'm trying to do and then translate that into something that I have no ability to do that. So it becomes really important to know that. So, how should a business owner go about that process of hiring a creative and knowing, what creative is right for them?
I think it starts with a conversation. A lot of times people will reach out to me saying that they want one thing, right? They're like, oh, I need to redo my logo. But we get stuck in this idea of what we need or what we think we need. And so having an open conversation with somebody who even has some know in the field is it can do wonders, right? Because we're not always thinking, no one person can see everything. And so when you talk to somebody who is specialized in something, then you get a better insight. So say a customer or a business owner comes to me and says, I need to rebrand my logo. The
Yes,
first types of questions that I would ask would be, why do you feel you need to rebrand? Especially if this business has already been existing for a couple of years. I think they're doing great. I've even bought from them, right? But
right.
maybe they feel like they need a change. Maybe they feel like they could show up better online, right? Most of the time it's online presence. It's not necessarily, man, I need to make a t-shirt tomorrow and my logo doesn't look good on a t-shirt. That's normally not the case, right? The case is normally I need to show up better and I need it to be presented better. So
Yes.
instead of offering a logo design, it's the strategy that comes behind it. It's okay, the real issue here is I'm hearing that you need to strengthen your online presence. How can we do that? Aside from the branding itself, right? Aside from the logo is one part. We get to see all the other things in between, right? That means your social media presence, that means your website, that means the photos that are presented on either your website or your social media. Like it's the whole thing. And sometimes people don't think about that until it comes up in a conversation. So I
Yeah.
think
So go ahead.
being able to have that conversation with a business owner to get them thinking in the right way so that we can pinpoint the actual needs and the solutions for those needs. Because sometimes we think one thing, and then a month later, we're like, oh, that's not even what the problem was, you know?
Yeah. So let me talk to you from a business owner standpoint, right? Sometimes the challenge is that there's so many segments of the strategy, and you have different people pitching you from different facets of the strategy, but they're just um, pitching you from one specific facet, not the entire strategy. So, how do you know what the real problem is and who you need to get versus getting and assembling a team? When do you know when I just need a graphic designer versus when I really just need a branding specialist or I need a marketing specialist or strategist? Or when do I need a content creator or a full service agency? How do I know that? Make those kind of decisions to get more value out of my buck.
That is when the question becomes not what do you need, it's where are you going? Um, Instead of just seeing one part of the whole, you need to be able to see the bigger picture, right? What is it exactly that you want 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Where do you see your brand going? Do you see them on your products on shelves? Do you see it e-commerce? Are you going to stay um, small and only do pre-orders? Like I think for me, understanding the business itself and how it functions and how many people are involved and what the goals are definitely helps pinpoint, okay, how can I as a creative, what can I offer to be a small part in getting there? We think about corporations, that's exactly how they do their plans, their strategic plans. No one person knows everything about the business, and you can't, right? Not even the owner knows everything that goes on that happens um, outside of where they're not present. But if you have a general understanding of where the company is going to go and what the company does, then that's where all of those different parts come to an alignment without you trying to work hard, because those types of people will know exactly the direction that they're going. So it's a matter of
But
really knowing where you want to be.
and what I hear you saying without saying it is that from the creative professionals standpoint, you've got to do your homework. You've got to know about that company. You've got to know where they're going. You need to understand what that business owner's problems are before they even know it. Maybe they even can't express it, but you've done your research to be able to, hey, here's a problem that you might not even know you have, and here's a solution to that problem.
Yes. And having that
Yeah.
conversation, because obviously we're not going to know everything, right? But asking the right questions is the start to getting to the bottom of all of that.
Yeah, yeah. So let's circle back to the conversation that we were having before about pricing, right? Sometimes an uncomfortable topic, particularly for the creator, right? And you talk about emotional pricing and stuff like that. So I'll lead off with this question. Um, are Guam creatives sometimes undervaluing themselves? And does this underpin pricing ultimately hurt the creative industry on Guam? What do you think?
It definitely does. And I actually have seen that firsthand. Um, there's a lot of times where creatives will set out a price that is a lot cheaper than maybe bigger teams, right? Let's say a freelancer sets a price of 500 for 10, 20 photos, right? And then you have an agency who has 10 people. Of course, their prices are going to be larger. They're going to be in the thousands, not only because they have a whole team that has to benefit from this, but they also have their own processes. And so, a lot of the times, right, especially in our economy, people and businesses don't necessarily take kindly to higher prices. And that's just the culture here because we've been made to know that the price that people are charging aren't necessarily matched to the value that we're getting. And so it's a big toss up because it depends on, of course, the creative, their valued work. Some creatives aren't as experienced as others, and so they tend to price lower. But then that's like comparable to applying for a job and then saying, oh, we can't hire you because you don't have experience. But then how do you get experience without doing the job, right? So we can't stay in that mind space. It's just as the people hiring, the customers who are buying, it's their responsibility to understand exactly what they're getting and the value of it. It's also the responsibility as creatives to set those standards, not even just with the pricing, but with the value that they're matching with that price. Um, sure, you can be inexperienced, but are you doing what you need to do to get better, to offer what your clients need and meeting deadlines and obviously not every creative is going to be that way. Not every creative is also going to be strategic. Not every creative is going to offer more than they should, and that is totally okay. But setting that price standard to where it's basic work and you doing so much more sets a better bar for creatives, for freelancers, and even for the customers that are looking for these types of services. Because then at that point, they're like, wow, everyone's charging above $1,000. And why is that? It starts the right conversation. It makes them think, oh, I'm not just paying for the end product. I am paying this person for their time, for their expertise, for the process, and for the longevity of what I'm paying for. People don't just use photo
Yes.
just to print it out and that's it, right? It's the digital age. There's so many different things that you can do with the assets that you get from creatives. It's not a one-time thing. It's something that you can use over and over and over again. And there's no royalties for that. Oftentimes people don't ask, hey, I know you're going to be really successful one day. Let's charge you this much because that is insane, right? We are not at that part of our economy where we're able to think that way. But starting at prices and making sure that we are advocating for ourselves in this creative industry is the first step to being able to charge for royalties.
So let's start this conversation and go down this rabbit hole. So, multiple questions, and then I'll let you respond to the multiple questions. So, the first question is like, how do you do that when Guam is such a small market, small business economy, right? Where the upside profit potential is kind of under pressure and limited to be able to charge those higher prices. So that's part one. Part two is there's kind of like a built-in bias, right? The built-in bias is, well, if I'm going to pay those kind of higher prices for this kind of work, then obviously I've got to go off island to get that because somebody back in the States will obviously be better than what we have here locally because they're out of California or New York or wherever. They know what they're doing. So I'll be successful and I'll get my money's worth if I go to them and pay them those higher prices versus paying this local person there. What say you on that?
That's such a double-edged sword, that one, because there's truth to it, you know? Um, the opportunities that creatives have here are limited, but that doesn't mean that we have to stay in that limited mindset. You know, it's like I said, the digital age. You could teach yourself something for free and get good at it, and then charge for, your services to be used. And I think going back to your first question, right, about pricing and setting those standards, it's about gradual change, about gradual growth, whether it's the
Yeah,
creative or the industry itself. There needs to be an upward battle, so to say, in providing opportunities, providing education, whether that's at a big scale or a personal scale. I feel like it's very accessible. Like you can teach yourself on YouTube and still be good at what you do. But people need to be willing to grow and learn. Just because you go to school off island for whatever and you get a degree, it doesn't mean that you're an expert. It doesn't mean that you know more than somebody would here. Because going back to your second question, hiring outside, right, internationally, it's great when we hire people who are from Guam that live out there. But the thing is, if they've been gone too long, they don't necessarily understand our local market, maybe
mm,
even our tourist market. Like 10 years ago, our tourism industry was completely different from what it is now. How can you say that you completely understand something? How can you help somebody with solutions if you don't know the problem, right? And so I
right.
think I'm not saying let's not hire internationally, but it's more of let's understand that even though the talent here may seem smaller or less experienced, it's because we need to be able to create those opportunities for people to make better things, and we need to make sure that that doesn't die here. Because if creatives
Right,
feel like there's nothing that they can do to progress and that they have to leave, then it's going to be an endless cycle of the snake eating its tail. We're not
right.
addressing the real problem, right? It's okay, I need this, so I'm going to hire someone else. No. Why don't you just try to find somebody? Because I promise you, there is always somebody who can do what you need them to do here. It's just a matter of looking for that in the right places.
And those people, like you were talking about, hopefully they're more rooted in the market, rooted in the culture, rooted in the people, and the currency of what's going on to provide you a better solution rather than somebody who's off island who might have maybe a deeper understanding of technologies that are used to deliver things or what is worked at a bigger scale, but that doesn't mean that it's going to work here in Guam.
Right.
Yeah, very good, very good. So let's talk about what is the right creative option for a business owner, particularly here, a business owner on Guam. There are advertising agencies, boutique firms, independent freelancers, and now a whole host of other new creatives and entrepreneurs who are using technology and AI to compete in new ways. How do you know, from a business owner perspective, which is the right model for you? Big agency, boutique studio, or freelancer? How do you make that decision?
I say it's as simple as figuring out the scale of the project. Obviously, if you want to create a whole production, you're going to need a whole team. If you're going if your project is something small that needs to be done one time, boutique freelancers, they still have the capacity, but they also have the full attention to your project. So it really just depends on what you're trying to do, right? If it's something that's going to take a long time, a period of time over years, a team is great because you have multiple people accountable. If you need something done within a couple of months or a couple of weeks, working one-on-one with 1 to 2 people, it's more efficient because you get to really see what each other is doing, right? And there's not too many heads um, driving one
Hmm.
idea. It comes down to project management at that point. Um, of course, quality will come to your own discretion, right? It's kind of like choosing a barber or a hairstylist,
Yes,
right? You
yes,
have all of these options, but will you absolutely go to anybody? Probably not. You're going to go to the
right.
person that you've seen their work, and that's important. You got to be able to see people's work to know if you could work with them, if you even like what they do. But you're also not going to just hire somebody and hope that they don't bring their expertise, right? If
Right,
I say I
right.
want yellow hair and it doesn't go with my skin tone, I'm gonna want someone to tell me before I dye my hair that that's probably not it's not a good choice for you, you know? So I
Right.
think it's a matter of scale and making sure that you know what you want at the end of the day, you know?
Yes, yes. So throughout the episode, you've been making a very passionate underlying case for the talent here on Guam, the local talent that, hey, the local creatives are capable. They need more opportunities. Please take a chance on them. They can do it. So let's talk about that creative talent, quote unquote, problem here on Guam. What um, pipelines do we have to produce creatives that we can trust in, if you will, that can be used to deliver solutions for local Guam business owners? And you can talk about your own path and what you saw as you were coming up. And if you were queen for the day, what would you change on that? And how can we leverage different other things out there to create a pipeline? And maybe it's not a deliberate pipeline like what existed in the past, because with technology and things being leveled these days, you people have an opportunity to do a lot of things, and it seems like it would be in the best interest of local young people to avail themselves of this. So I'll let you give your perspective on this.
I think it's about nurturing. That is the only way that creatives can have more opportunities here. Aside from learning and having education and places to be able to just do what they do and explore, obviously not everyone is in the lifestyle capacity to just do what they want or do what they love because they got to get paid. And so I think it's really about people who have been in the industry, like myself, instructors, and maybe even people who have been in big agencies here for years, because there's so many have been here for decades, right? But you don't really hear about them anymore because they get kind of stuck in this everyday flow of working for the same like corporations and people. There's no innovation. I personally have not seen a designer try to bring opportunities here or make
Mm,
opportunities for other designers. There's nobody advocating for the young generation who's interested but has no place to go to learn more aside from our colleges or outside of the island. I know you've probably seen there's so many different places that have been opening up for creatives, right? There's so
yeah,
many small businesses, cafes,
especially
creative
through GUMA, we
spaces,
saw all of the
especially. Exactly.
yes.
So, that is one step into it. You need to make space for people to do what they can do. But then you also
Mhm.
need to provide them with growth opportunities, whether that's classes or courses, right? Teaching people what you know or bringing other people who know what they've been doing for years and how we can apply it here, right, to the island. Or, and I'm gonna, I'm gonna go the other way too. Businesses. Are you creating spaces that allow people to really grow? Because um, a lot of roles in the past 5 years that I've seen, job hunting after I graduated, they're a lot and they don't pay much. Um, a lot of times,
Yeah.
the marketing aspect and the design aspect and the content creation, a lot of times that role is one or two people. And that is completely insane because you cannot ask somebody to be the bookkeeper, but also manage, human resources. Like they require two different brains and they require so much time and effort. And so if businesses were able to value creatives for what they are, pay them right, give them opportunities to grow, whether it's go to conferences off island or to take classes here somewhere or to work internships at places to where they can really understand different parts of how their jobs can really change the industries. If we don't have that, there's nothing that we can do to change the industry here, you know? Some people can get really good, we can have education, but then if there's no career path or opportunities, then it's kind of all for nothing, you know? Like we'll all just be struggling. And then that is when competition becomes a thing. That is when people will be competing in the wrong way. And I think as a designer myself, as a creative, I I'll tell you this right now, I don't believe that I have competition. You know, I believe that there are people who can do what I do better, maybe less than what I can do, but nobody is the same. No two
mm,
people are the same. And so, what we offer, whether prices vary or not, the experience will always be different. And so,
mm.
because of that, we shouldn't have competition with creatives. There should be community. There should be helping change the narrative of how people see creative work and the opportunities that circle around that. And if we all work together to create those opportunities, how much better would it be for business owners and for creatives? You'll probably see more creatives really, really
Can you
making that career path.
So, Ashley, can you talk more in detail about your experience at GCC and GCC as a pathway versus other um, options on island, as well as just doing it yourself, like you said, U2 DIY. Can you talk to that a little bit?
I think it's amazing when people can just teach something or learn it on their own, right? Through YouTube or whatever resources. That's great. It's amazing. And I think self-study is one way to get really good at something, right? You need that exposure, you need that experience. But
Right. You
I
need those
really,
reps.
yes. But, you know, also structured education it helps because guess what? It's not just you in the corner of your home learning to do something. It's the whole experience of being exposed to other people's minds and other people's work. And it's a perspective that you may not even have on your own. No one person can do something on their own and be successful. In this, especially in this creative industry, you need other people, whether it's to hire you, to help you, or whatever, right? It's about the community. And I think my experience at GCC, first of all, was amazing. I didn't expect to come out of college with 2 degrees. So I actually went into GCC um, knowing I was going to major in visual communications, but I ended up coming out with visual communications and marketing degrees. Because there I actually saw that there was such a need in our businesses and our culture here to where you needed to know both, right? You can't
Yeah.
limit yourself thinking I'm only going to stay in one lane because then that really it caps you at a certain point, right? And so how many designers or creatives do you know can actually market something on the business side? And how many
Right.
marketers do you know who have really good eye for design and visual
Yeah.
hierarchy to where you can actually digest what you're taking in. And so those two things go together, whether people, you know, like it or not. It's just how things are. And so I think when people learn and have that type of education, it's not so much about learning skill sets. It's about preparing your mind to be open to things, to be open to seeing and receiving so that you're constantly growing, you're constantly, you know, the industry is changing all the time because of um, the digital era, like things today are different than they were
Yes.
a year ago, and it's ever changing. And so keeping an open mind and adjusting where you need to be, make those adjustments where is needed is definitely important for even education. And I think that also goes with the education here, right? We can't keep
Yeah.
teaching the same thing and expect great people to come out of it if we're going to be offering
Yes.
the same thing. It needs to be ever changing the way the industry is changing.
Okay. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the multi-ton elephant in the room. Artificial intelligence, AI, right? So people look back and say, AI can now generate logos, graphics, advertisements, copy, images, video, entire marketing concepts in seconds. Why do I need to hire these people and pay them top dollar to do all of that? So, as a creative professional, what do you see and how do you see AI? Is AI your threat and your competition that's going to end you? Is it a tool? Is it a force multiplier? Or is it something that your potential customers don't understand? They think they can do it all themselves when maybe AI is missing some ingredients that you bring to the table. What say you?
AI is definitely a tool. I'm not going to go into the whole, resources, how it's used, because that would take forever. But um, when you choose two cell phones, or when you have to choose between Apple and Samsung, a lot of times people are die hard for either brand. But at the end of the day, it's a phone. It allows you to call people. It allows you to use the internet, right? It has its functionality. Same thing with AI. It has its functionality. And unfortunately, for artists, traditional artists, right? I think a lot of people that use AI don't completely understand how it works. It would take whatever prompt you give it, and it has a database of information out in the internet, out in the world, and it takes bits and pieces of the information that is already existing, that has been made and inputted by actual human beings. So if you are asking an AI generator to make or create a graphic or a photo or anything visual for you, it is taking what it already has in its database. So that is somebody else's work. That is ideas and things over time condensed right in front of your eyes. And a lot of people think, oh, it's a means to an end. I just need this right now. But they don't think about the impact it has of the people that actually had to make those resources. Somebody hired them years ago to make these assets so that it becomes accessible. It's a great tool if you're going to use it to what was the word that you used earlier? Something about it being a force, but it is a
Force
tool. And you know what?
multiplier.
Force multiplier, like creatives
Yeah.
also use it internationally, but to not to do the work, but to speed up the processes, right? So I think it's a matter of how are you going to use it? Are you going to ask it to do everything for you? Or are you going to use it to help you clarify something, right? Information. I think it's perfect because we do that with Google. We do that with information. But when it comes to
Yeah.
visuals, it's not the same thing. And it has to be separated? So I don't think it's competition. If anything, it actually flushes out the types of business owners there are. Because in my experience, people who want accessibility and speed don't necessarily value process and time and investment. Sad to say, those are characteristics that can be pulled out from business owners, right? We don't always get to work with people who completely align or understand creative work or value it. And I think it fleshes out the businesses who creatives may want to have a longer conversation with instead of going straight into designing for them, because then that ends up becoming a relationship that isn't exactly efficient, and then it ends up
Right.
ruining the taste for everybody. So no, not a competition. It's not making things worse. I think it's shining a light on what work creatives do, all the experience, all the time, all the tools. Because there is one thing for sure, you cannot get what you get from AI. You can't get that from a creative, like working with them personally. You don't get the conversations. In fact, I don't know how many times that I've used ChatGPT and got mad at it for not doing exactly what I told it to do? So you're missing that conversation. You're missing the
I would
idea.
blame the prompt engineer.
But there's things that you cannot get. You can't get that from AI. And maybe years from now, sure, it'll be advanced. But in this moment in time, it is not there yet. So we can't act like it's a catch-all solution to creative work because it isn't.
Yeah. All right. Let's circle back to our discussion about spaces where we can help mentor and groom creatives and give them a space to kind of flourish. That brings us back to where we met, GUMA, right? The Guam Unique Merchandising and Arts. Their 16 week program to do training and mentoring for aspiring entrepreneurs on the island. Let's talk about that. What changed for you because of GUMA? You came into GUMA one way, Ashley. You went through the training and mentoring program, and another Ashley came out on the other side, and now you have about a year's worth of experience under your belt. What has changed, and what were kind of those key lessons learned for you?
I think it was very comparable to my time at GCC too. It was the exposure to community, exposure to other minds. I went in thinking one thing and came out thinking, oh my goodness, so many different branches of where I want to take my brand. And I think my own brand positioning is what had changed. Um, how I do business, my processes, none of that changed as much as the why for me. I wanted to, starting at GUMA, I wanted to make people understand that, hey, I could help you, right? Like, let me help you while I can do what I do and I'm good at it. But this whole conversation that we've had today is what I came out of it. I'm like, man, all of these businesses, these business owners, they don't have the support that they need. They don't know where to look for creative support. How many other people can even offer this? And all of those types of questions help me understand that that's also my responsibility as a creative. I can't go about my ways and continue to take on projects if there's nowhere to go because eventually I will get tired of it. There's
Right,
not enough time in the day. I can't take on every project that comes to me because that's not realistic. Do we have the foundation that we need here on the island to have sustainability? And that's part
right,
of my approach with my business is I want to make sure my clients are able to be sustainable with or without me because at the end of the day their business needs to run if they hire me or not, right? And how heartbreaking would it be if I spent all of my time and energy and my heart into creating like a really good brand identity for a business who ends up getting shut down or closed in 2 years or 5 years? All of that
yeah,
would have been wasted, like the time and energy and the heart that gets put into it on my end and on theirs. And so for me, my offerings are really changing to make sure that there is some type of sustainability, whether it's for the business owner or for another creative.
yeah,
So I think it really changed my mindset on what I can do as the small creative. Am I doing enough to help change the community, to make better opportunities for others? And to me, that's very important because I want other people to know that they can. They can
Oh,
do
that's
it.
awesome. Yeah. So tell us the good, the bad, and the ugly of building a business here on Guam. And again, if you were queen for the day, what would you change?
The good is it really is, or well, no, let's start with the bad. The bad is it's very true that you have to spend money to make money. If I knew that, I mean, it goes back to pricing, right? If I'm pricing X amount and it still doesn't cover all the costs of expense, like business expenses, just running your businesses, taxes, nobody talks about these things. No one says, oh, if you make this much, you have to pay this much. And, there's not enough resources. I think the bad thing about having a business is here on the island, we don't have the right type of resources and information. And so it's not as accessible. People have to dig to find information. And I think that's a hurdle that every single business person is going through, like the process is here for even just getting your license or all those different things is not transparent. The good thing is we have community and, GUMA is one of the reasons that we are able to have more resources. And I think we don't have to rely on people or big organizations to have a community.
Right.
Community starts with two people and then it
Yes.
grows. And so by
Yes.
nurturing and truly, genuinely supporting other businesses in whatever capacity you can, whether it's being a customer, offering resource information, whatever is at your exposure, I feel like being connected with other people is what's going to help us grow and be sustainable. And that's the good part of the business is when you're able to find like-minded individuals who just love what they're doing, but are also making money off of that. Like, how awesome would it be if we had all of Guam, just small business owners, but we're so self-sufficient that we don't need anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, good
That
thing.
is the goal.
Community. Community.
Yeah. All right, so let's look down the road for 10, 20, 30 years plus. What's the bigger vision for the small creator? Where do you want to go? What do you want to see for the thing that you're building?
It's funny because when I was in GUMA, I was thinking, you know what? I don't want to do this forever. I want to be an agency. And then a few months before we graduated, we didn't even end yet. I was like, no, maybe I don't want to. Maybe I don't want to have an agency because then that means a whole different business, right? Um, I think now that you're asking this question, I want to be able to change my mind. I don't have a clear set path on where I want to be 5, 10 years from now. All I know is I would love for the small creative to be that starter conversation for the creative community. I want to make sure that other people don't have the same difficulties that I did starting all of this and aren't discovering things 5 years later into trying to run their business. So I would love to be that, so to say, big sister to fellow creatives and help them get to where they want to get to, because then that means a better Guam.
Oh, that's awesome. So let's finish on that note, right? So to the person listening who is exactly where you were several years ago. They're talented. People keep telling them, hey, you really got a knack for X, Y, and Z. But they're still designing or photographing, drawing, filming, writing, or creating a side hustle, if you will, but they're not convinced they can build a real business around it. What's your advice and what's the first move they should make?
I would say show people who you are before you show them what you can do. Oftentimes, brands are more relatable when you can see the owner's story or you can see the people behind it. The transparency of who people are and why they do what they do is more important than the work itself, I think. And because it makes people more relatable to each other, it's an easy transaction. You know, you want to work with people who you're drawn to. And granted,
Mm,
not everybody is going to be your cup of tea. You're not going to be everybody's cup of tea. It's about finding the right fit. But you can only do that if you show people who you are first. Because at the end of the day, people choose to work with you, not your
right,
business.
right. That's great. That's a great note to end on. Ashley, thank you so much for joining me today. And as one of my fellow 2025 GUMA classmate, it's really great seeing where you are now and seeing everything that you've done on your entrepreneurial journey to date. And I'm expecting great and wonderful things to continue for you. I think today's conversation has really made an important point. That's that Guam's creative community isn't simply about making things look good. Creativity creates business value, and that there are people here on this island who have the talents and the creativity that can create value for businesses. So, thank you so much for this really great conversation. If people want to know more about you and the Smol Creative and what you're doing, besides your Instagram, following you on Instagram, what else can they reach out and contact you or find out what you have going on?
I do have a website as well that is on my Instagram. The link is there. You can even just Google the Smol Creative and I should show up there, right? The Smol Creative Guam. But
With an
really, I'm
O,
everywhere.
an O and one L.
SMOL. But aside from that, now that we had that conversation, I am really trying to, walk the walk. I actually just started a new account, a new Instagram account, and it's going to be kind of based off of branching off of the Smol Creative. So you'll still be able to see things there. But this space, I'm calling it Mind Space. And it's going to be a community where creatives can showcase exactly what they do, right? Their thoughts, their works, not just designers, also videographers, photographers, artists. I want this to be the start of a community where the conversation doesn't end. Today was that start. So, yeah, mind space. It's going to be there too.
Awesome.
It'll be linked. It'll be linked to the Instagram, but you can mostly find me there.
Awesome. As always, I learned a lot. To my viewers out there, I hope you learned a lot with today's conversations. Please like, subscribe, and follow me on all social media platforms, including Substack. Don't forget to check out my Innovate column in the Pacific Daily News every other Friday of the month. Until next time, whether you're at work, at home, or at play, remember to always innovate. Thank you.